Hello and welcome back to my GTNH playthrough. It is Monday, August 24th, and we're down here in this newly caved out or carved out area I've created underneath my antimatter stuff, just for context, because I forgot I still haven't fixed the map on this client over here. Is right here underneath these three guys. So now, apologize, I haven't had a video since last Monday, but I really haven't played too much. Again, it's been kind of weird not playing when I usually play quite a bit, but actually, honestly, the hardest thing with going several days without playing, especially right now, is like kind of need to recalibrate myself every time I start. Like, what was I working on? What was I doing? So up till yesterday, I didn't make any sort of progress from the last video. I did get a little cocky with my IR harmonies where I'd had programmed circuits in, and then I definitely used way too much power. As you can see, I'm at 2.81 out of to the power of 19th, where I was all the way up at to the power of 20 at one point before the IR harmonies. And then since then, I've messed around with a bunch of stuff. I've had some frustrating messing around with some antimatter, the little bits I've played, and then my power's kind of been in a free fall. As you can see, I'm in the green now, finally, but that's all as a result of today and what we went through, or what I put together today. So, just kind of for basically, I'm working on two fronts right now. So, like I said, it took me a little bit to kind of get recalibrated. But the main thing that kind of instigated the base reinforcing part of what I've done today was I was trying to fix the power free fall that I was in. And one of the main things I noticed was that when I was looking at the power calculators, the difference between using purified 10 gam and space-time versus the tachyon-rich temporal fluid and spatially enlarged fluid is immense. So with the current setup as it is, it was using, I believe, 50,000 UMV amps, and then it was still making a profit. But now with using those two, this only costs, I believe, 15,000 UMV amps. Well, let me come over here. E to the 12E. It's not quite right, but no matter, or basically a lot less. It's significantly less power costly to use those two fluids. Now, the problem is that about a week ago, I guess I kind of misspoke earlier. I did make a little progress after the last video, but that progress was I carved out this space, and then I set up this guy, which was going to be my first one with using the two new fluids over here. And when you use the two new fluids, the ideal amount of antimatter that you pull into the hatches jumps up to 140,000 versus the 30,000 used up there. Now, the problem, however, is I very quickly ran out of spatially enhanced fluid, or enlarged. I had a bunch more of the tachyon fluid, but I'm sure if I hadn't already had a surplus of that, I just would have ran out of both at the same time instead. And when I ran out of those, all these things were power fail, void all the antimatter, and it was just a terrible time. It was a rough little bit. Didn't make any progress because I didn't want to leave the game running in case I accidentally voided all my antimatter. So, and then after the first time that happened, because I literally voided everything, and I did roll back the base like a whole day. It was, and ended up deciding on a new approach, because so before I was feeding these three all their fluids off the main network. So what I ended up finally having enough time to do today is, and it wasn't even that complex, is I set up a little bit of a logic circuit for turning these guys on and off. And you can see this guy's off at the moment, and I'll get to that in a minute. But over here, these four RS latches essentially represent the four different fluids that the multi-block takes up there, which are protomatter, Tachyon Rich, Spatially Enlarged, and Shirobon. Technically, there's a fifth fluid here, the depleted Mark 6 fluid, but I'm not using that. And then down here, just basic RS latch, low, high on the tanks over here. And if they've triggered the high, all those things can run. Now, even with all this, this prevented the machines from turning off. The problem is when the machines turn off, I've found that no matter what, it basically voids the entire first input of antimatter, like just the way every time. So you really don't want it to turn off because you're going to waste a lot of antimatter. So the next thing I really needed to do was to speed up these two fluids. Everything else kept up. Shirobon mostly because I've been doing some rearrangement on the dimensional forges. I keep forgetting this map is not up to date. But basically, for the spatial fluids, the main things that were holding it back were tesseracts and what are these things called? Stable boson containment units. So those two ingredients in the temporal fluid, you can see them right here. Even right now, we're technically still waiting on stable boson containment units. Now I did speed this up a lot today, which I'll go into how. But before this was the bottleneck. The tesseracts by far were the bottleneck. Basically, I just moved the tesseracts over to this forge right here, and all this thing runs is tesseracts running at about as fast as I can make them go. Got 262,000 amp UMV hatch going into this guy. So, and like I said, all it makes is tesseracts, so I don't have to wait on those anymore. Originally, my plan was to do the little tesseract loop that seems to be available. There's like a tesseract transcendent metal block loop. Tesseract. And go into the little DTF. You can see there's this recipe. So there is a loop there that needs to be set up. However, part of that loop, you need stellar catalyst, which is what we get from the Eye of Harmony. And currently, it kind of feels like a big old chicken and egg with like multiple parts where I just don't feel comfortable having anything rely on a material that has to come out of the Eye of Harmony until I get it faster, and I know I'm not going to run out because that would just be extra frustrating. For my original plan was to set up said loop, which is what these two guys have going on here, and then like any of the multi-blocks involved in said loop will go here in the middle, and it'll just be a little closed loop process for making more tesseracts. However, these will be a future problem for once I get the Eyes of Harmony going faster. So that was tesseracts. Next up was fixing the boson containment cells. So to do that, we have to hop over the Large Hadron Collider. Now, I haven't really had to mess with this thing at all. Unlike the... Oh, wow, that was weird. I haven't had a leg spike in a while. Einstein multi-block. This thing works great and works exactly like I expected to, no issues. So the real problem was, however, though, it was kind of slow. Like I said, it was the bottleneck. First thing I did over here, this is where those containment units are made. Upgraded it to UMV, as you can see, through a wireless hatch on there. Didn't really make a big difference, though, because we were waiting on gravitons. So what I ended up doing is over on this guy, the main controller, you can see I've got completed cycles of 62. That's basically all I had to do to change it. Before I had it running on 56 completed cycles, which is the minimum needed to be able to get all the stuff I needed out of here, like to get all the particles. Every cycle above that, there's like it's not quite exponential. Apparently it's a quadratic equation of like for the energy or quadratic lines or parabola, I guess, for if you're only using one half. But I jumped up to 62, which is basically the maximum that this current laser hatch can handle. And like I said, it is keeping up now. I'm not like the antimatter is not shutting off. I will have to up that eventually when I go and turn on the other antimatter sequencers, because those will definitely be drawing substantially more of that fluid. I might also need to craft a second Spinmatron because the Spinmatron multi-block is where you make those two fluids. And I believe I've got this guy sped up as much as I really can at the moment. As you can see, I've got the upgraded capacitor over here. I've got the... actually I didn't realize I used UIV. This is a mistake on my part. I need to throw a UMV laser hatch here because it can only be overclocked so much on each tier from what I was reading. So I should have, in this case, one of the 262 UMVs instead. And that this would actually go faster, even though it's going to be able to pull the same amount of energy. So I'll make a note of that I need to fix that. I also went in here and upgraded the rotors to be million ones, so this is also faster now. And then, so yeah, that was like most of that. Basically all that to say, to get enough to keep the antimatter sequencers on to try to get us back into the green, reduce the power, by using better fluids, increase everything that goes into making said fluids to go faster so they don't ever shut off. And then the final step, which is not really useful at the moment. So I last week had up my Nequata 6 production. However, I wasn't turning into depleted. Now, I'm only going to be able to do so much of this because this is not really practical, what I'm about to show off. What you should do is use the neutron activator and accelerator and just accelerate the particles and go faster. That also relies on tesseracts, which I don't want to rely on at the moment. So for the moment, I've just been building large Nequata reactors because they're relatively cheap, all things considered, and just getting rid of the fluid that way, and then just getting a little bit of bonus power, which, I mean, is not the worst. I mean, this right here is the same as one of my Dyson Swarm complexes right now. So, and this basically will run forever without like having to worry about running out of swarms. How are my swarms doing? 69,000. So at least they're working still. So it's not the worst. I'm gonna probably build a line of reactors on both sides of this opening, just underneath. I started with this one to make sure the clearance was there, but then from there, at some point, I will build the neutron accelerator and just do it that way. Because like I said, that's way more practical. Really, that is never going to be able to keep up with this thing, let alone, or one of those up there, let alone this guy who's going to be eating way more fluid once I turn it on. Now you can see I pulled this out of here because this guy has one of the UIV capacitors, so it was eating it was using a lot of passive power while this thing was turned off, so I just did this. But eventually this guy will turn on. It's just once I get a buildup of antimatter big enough that I can fill all the tanks that are feeding it. So in this case, basically 48 million antimatter is what I need. And I don't want to have this building it up on its own, even though that would technically be faster, just because, again, power spiral downwards. So this thing will use a lot of power if I do it that way prior to this versus me just like overflowing with antimatter. I might run it a little bit while I'm not crafting anything, but I was crafting stuff. It wasn't all just base reinforcement. So on the progress front, basically our main goal for the next while is basically IR harmonies, more IR harmonies, getting all the way to this tier 9 IR harmony to get through all these ingot tiers. Currently, I'm going to skip tier 3, go right to tier 4. I don't see any reason to make these. It feels like a waste of material. So you go tier 4 right away to get black dwarf matter. Now, to do that, we need these primitive stuff. We need all the different, basically everything that goes into the Boss-Einstein line, as well as a couple of reinforced versions of those things. Now you see, I've done a lot of the primitives already. I don't think anything's crafting. Yeah, so all of them are done. I'm piecewizing it right now just because that multi-block still gives me problems. It works a lot better, but we're getting into some really expensive material. And again, I don't really care about the actual material. It's just the time that goes into it. So I am kind of babying it through, working towards that, which I do need to fire off a new craft. I just don't probably, yeah, you know what? Why not? Reinforced sensor array. Where you got? Go ahead and try to craft this guy. I said, go and try to craft this guy. Where are you at? X start. Yeah. And so it's just been piecewising. I'll touch on that more later once I actually have the tier 4 blocks, which once I get all the components, it honestly shouldn't take too long because the rest of it's not too bad. But yeah, that's basically what I've been at. Like I said, not a lot of playing. I do expect I'll have more videos this week. I should have more time, but like I said, it's also my peak season, so who knows? It could turn into another situation where I don't have one till next Monday. I will try to avoid that because I do miss playing. Like I said, I probably spent like a good hour this morning just recalibrating and figuring out what was going on while I was watching my power drain drastically because I started the day at 4.6. So it was a little stressful morning trying to figure out what to do, but we got there. We're in the green, moving onwards and upwards. So yeah, I hope everybody had a good week and a good weekend, and I appreciate it for watching, and I will be back sometime this week. Have a good night.